Welcome, all sideliners and guests, to another episode of Sidelines Pass. We're going to have a huge NFL discussion with the name pending. We'll probably take some of your votes on the name of this show towards the end. Me, Joshua Thompson, associate editor of Sidelines. And with us today is Paul Fowler. Paul, tell us where you're joining us from today.
I am currently joining you from London, and it's just gone midnight, so it's a late night discussion for me.
This is a quick question for myself and all the fans. You're not much of a Jaguars fan, are you?
I think they're pretty fun, but that's about it, really.
We're talking about
a lot of fun to watch.
Teams. I mean, it's good because we're talking to the NFL and we got a bunch of expansion teams, or they're talking about expanding the teams, and Jacksonville being one of the teams going overseas. So you always have to wonder if it's just a product of circumstance to say, yeah, my team's here, so that's my team, or if you really are into a team that just hasn't been in a successful division for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, going to some of the Wembley games, they are quite well supported, I think. There are a lot of Jags fans in the UK.
It's always going to be an interesting topic of discussion. We'll probably get into more of that a little bit later. But let's talk about teams that are successful right now. Let's go ahead and jump straight off. We're talking about teams that are in the playoffs. For those of you that have been living literally under a rock over the past weekend, we just had the wild card games, which a couple of them ended very badly. That's for a whole nother discussion altogether. But now we're into the divisional weekend, and we have 4 great games going off across Saturday and Sunday. And let's start out with a team that won in a not so awesome fashion, going up in the NFC divisional game, the Seattle Seahawks, who will be facing off against the Green Bay Packers. The Arizona Cardinals.
There's the Panthers.
And the Seahawks are going to be going off against the Panthers. My apologies, this weekend, and it's going to be in Carolina. Paul, tell us a little bit about this game. Who do you got squaring off on who do you got winning this game?
Well, I think it's going to be a very interesting game. Perhaps it might be the game of the weekend. And like, these two teams have faced each other a lot over the last 3 years. And each time the games have only been decided by 5 points or less. With Seattle winning all but the last one. And then it's like, if you're looking at the game between Seattle and Minnesota last week, they weren't very lucky to win. But you also have to take that game into a vacuum because the weather clearly affected it so much. And then just comparing the two teams, you've got 2 very good defenses, and then you've also got 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league for this year in Cam Newton, who I think will win the MVP, and Russell Wilson, who played at a historic level for the last 7 weeks of the season. So I think it should be a very, very interesting game. It should be a close one too.
Yeah, he definitely does some key points. -6 kickoff in the Seattle-Minnesota game last weekend.
Yeah,
going to be a drastic change in Carolina this coming weekend. And just touching on real quick, who do you think is going to be the bigger shutdown corner, Sherman or Norman?
It's hard to say because both of them tend to stick on one side of the field. They don't really go inside too much or cover the number one. It's tough because I think against the run, Sherman he's a very willing tackler and a very good defender against the run. And with Carolina's excellent rushing attack, that could be the difference that swings it. But it's kind of hard to say, really, because I think they're both excellent cornerbacks, and Norman's been out of his mind this year, basically. Like, he's had a very, very good year. And Sherman, he seems to get slept on a little bit because quarterbacks don't really target him that much because they know that when they do, he's likely going to get the better of them. Yeah, it's a tough one. I personally, as a Seahawks homer, I'm going to have to go with Sherman.
Okay.
But I think both guys are going to have a good game.
For those of you that have been tuning in with us for NBA podcast as well, you know that a lot of our homers don't tend to pick their team to win, so this is sort of a rarity in and of itself. And I have to agree, this definitely, I feel, is going to be a little bit of a defensive game. So I'm hoping to see a really exciting game on both ends. And speaking of defense, some top team also going to be playing this weekend. Arizona, Green Bay, the Cheeseheads visiting Arizona, and what I personally feel would be a slaughter on Arizona's part. But who do you have in that game? Why, and what do you think the final score will be?
Yeah, I also have to pick Arizona in that game, just because they played each other 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and Arizona just slaughtered the Packers. And I know the Packers looked a lot better last week against the Redskins, but their offense only really seems to work if they can get the run game going, and that's going to be a lot harder against the Arizona defense than it was against the Redskins defense last week. So I think that's going to be it's going to be a tough one for the Packers to come out and win it.
Saw the Cardinals putting up somewhere about 24 points a game. Do you see them doing that much at least against the Packers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Green Bay defense has been pretty good this year, particularly up front. Their front seven, with the likes of Mike Daniels and BJ Raji, Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers, they've all been on fire this year. But I think their secondary is full of a lot of young players, and I think the vertical passing offense that the Cardinals have could expose some weaknesses there if Palmer can get enough protection up front.
Now we're also looking at the opposite side of the conference, the AFC, and there are two games right now that could possibly be the more exciting pairs of games, or at least in some opinions. One in particular that dates back to a young quarterback out of the University of Florida that beat this team. We're talking about the Broncos versus the Steelers.
Yeah.
And it's not quite the same, but I think, I don't know if you feel the same way. This could be a really huge wild card game considering the health of both teams. Steelers and Broncos, who do you have coming out of this and why?
Well, I think this one has got to be the toughest to pick, purely because of the injuries, and also we don't know which Peyton Manning's going to show up. Cause he came into the end of last week, week 17. He played pretty well coming off the bench in place of Brock Osweiler, but at the beginning of the year he was pretty bad. Only Blake Bortles threw more interceptions this year, and Payton only played half a season. And then on the other side, Big Ben, I think it was reported today that it's a sprained AC joint, and he's got torn ligaments in his shoulder. So even if he does play, that does not sound good, and he won't be able to throw the ball downfield like he has done this season.
Could you foresee the backups playing a huge key in this game?
Yeah,
for either side.
Yeah, and
now
considering, if it's going to be a battle of the backups,
considering Leftwich and Osweiler both have had some experience. Leftwich less, considering that Mike Vick was more of the backup. quarterback for the Steelers, whereas Osweiler was literally the starter for
4 or 5 weeks. Yeah,
4 or 5 weeks. Yeah, and Osweiler actually has a couple of wins under his belt, some good yardage, something like 12 touchdowns, give or take.
I can't remember the exact stats, but I think if it comes down to the backups, I trust Osweiler a lot more than I trust like Landry Jones, who in the limited play he saw on Saturday, he threw a pick and could have lost the Steelers the game were it not for that crazy finish.
Luckily, Big Ben was handed the game in a Bengals colored gift wrapping.
Yeah.
But that's a story in and of itself altogether.
That could take hours, couldn't you?
So, bigger story of that game, is it the backups, the defense, or the health of the two quarterbacks?
I think it definitely is going to come down to the quarterback play we see, whether it is injured Big Ben against Peyton Manning or if it's Brock Osweiler against Landry Jones. I think whichever quarterback has the best performance will win the game, I think. But then you also have got Denver defense, which has been great this year and has won them a lot of games. So that could come into play down the stretch as well. So I think, all in all, it's a very tough one to call.
And now we have our last game to talk about, the game that I feel that no one wants to watch, but everyone expects the ending to be the same. The Chiefs are going to Boston, and visiting the New England Patriots. Who do you have winning that game?
I think I will take the Patriots and that's because they are at home and they've had a week off to get healthy. They're going to have. Well, we don't really know what Brady's ankle injury is going to be like, but he's going to play. And then you've got Edelman coming back, which should be absolutely huge, particularly seeing as the Patriots will try to nullify the Kansas City defense and their D-line by throwing those quick, short passes and getting the ball out of Brady's hands as quickly as possible. So guys like Edelman and Amendola and Gronk as well are going to have big games for the Patriots to come out with that one.
Now, the Patriots did lose their starting running back just before the playoffs had started. Do you think the running game will have any effects, or that will have any effect on the Patriots at all?
I think with James White out the backfield, it will do. So in the short passing game, but I kind of expect it. I expect the Patriots to play very much like they did against the Bills in Week 2, where Brady threw the ball 50-something times and tore the Bills' defense apart by avoiding their pass rush and just throwing the ball to his receivers, get yards after the catch, quick short passes, and then that's how they won the game. And I can see it going a very similar way this time against the Chiefs.
Now, we don't know for sure. The Patriots did lose, I believe, in back-to-back games closer towards the end of the season. There was a little bit of a nugget in that. And whether it be an opportunity taken by the opposing teams, bad coaching, nonetheless. But do you suppose that the Chiefs even stand a chance against this offense?
I do think they do stand a chance because we saw last week that their defense is legit. And when you've got Justin Houston, he returned last week, but he was clearly still not right. Another week, and I think he will be maybe not back to his best, but close to it this weekend.
Okay. Well, so hopefully all of you tune in this weekend for those 4 games.
Yeah. Very good slate of games.
If football is any indication of great entertainment, please go back to last week and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals squared off in what had to be one of the hugest meltdowns in playoff history, or at least in this past decade, which possibly could cost Marvin Lewis his job. And speaking of coaching positions, let's talk about a few real quick, and let's start out with the Bengals. Set 0-7 now.
Yeah.
2 different quarterbacks, a bevy of changes, and in multiple seasons where your team has won the division. Is this a Marvin Lewis product? Is this a Marvin Lewis problem that he's just not a coach for the playoffs? Are the Bengals ready to move on without him?
I think it's definitely a very tricky situation because overall, I think Marvin Lewis has done an excellent job. He's created a team that you could arguably say they have the best roster in the NFL. They're stacked at every position, and they've built a good team. And if you're going to talk to Browns fans, say, if you said to them, yeah, you're going to go to the playoffs for 5-6 years in a row,
mm-hmm.
I think they'd probably take that over what has happened in Cleveland. But I do think that there should be some sort of change there. I think something needs to sort of kick the franchise into those playoff wins. I mean, I think the loss last year wasn't on Lewis because they had so many injuries. I don't think they had any starting skill position players on offense for that game, and they're losing to the Colts. I think that was kind of expected with all the injuries, but this one was a very tough loss, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some changes up top.
All right. Well, if you were to say if Marvin Lewis does move on, or the Cincinnati Bengals do move on, do you see Marvin Lewis immediately getting a position anywhere else? Right now, I know San Francisco's got an opening with the Chip Kelly thing. Miami just hired their offensive coordinator as their head coach. There are a couple other positions open. So is Marvin Lewis a good enough coach to continue to coach at other teams in the NFL?
I think he could, particularly in San Francisco, where they need somebody with experience to come in and sort of right the ship. Mm-hmm. But I think what would be a good move by the Bengals is to keep Lewis around, but put him into more of a personnel role. Mm-hmm. So keep him on the more GM side, where he can help build the roster because he's done that very well, and then promote Hugh Jackson to head coach. I think that would be a good move, and it would give them a bit of a kick and a fresh look on the team.
So that would be good to cover both bases. And San Francisco is definitely in need of a lot of changes after the exodus of last season.
Oh, yeah.
You almost can't blame the record on the players themselves. Kaepernick with his health issues, Bortles Blaine Gabbert not really getting into any sort of rhythm for the season. Having no protection on the left guard position. There were just holes everywhere. So I could definitely see a head coach coming in and saying, this is what you need. If there were an immediate hire other than Marvin Lewis, who would you pick? Lovie Smith is now available. Chip Kelly is now available. Surprisingly, yet unsurprisingly, he's available. I hear that Lane Kiffin since he got left in
Yeah.
the national championship game, is now out job hunting again. He's actually not out at Alabama, but it's interesting that he bounced back from USC to Alabama. So there are some coaches there, probably some rumors of some collegiate coaches moving up into the NFL position. So of all the people out there, who would you pick and other than Marvin Lewis, and why?
See, I really like the idea of putting Chip Kelly in San Fran, because I think it's a team that's in desperate need of a complete makeover. So Chip Kelly would bring his culture and everything, and I think he would have learned from his mistakes in Philadelphia. He's already said he's fine to give up personnel control, and I think that if you bring him into San Francisco, he can work well with either. I think Kaepernick or Gabbert could potentially fit as mobile quarterbacks with, well, decent arms. Well, Kaepernick's got a great arm, but no touch. But I think Kelly would work quite well in San Fran, and he could build the roster that he wants, or in cooperation with Trent Baalke. But I also think that Baalke needs to take a lot of heat, for the way the 49ers have capitulated. Like you mentioned, no protection at left guard. They let Mikey Party walk in the off season, and that was clearly a huge loss for them. With all the other experienced players leaving and retiring, to lose guys like Party and Gore, leaders on the team, I think that was a bad move by Trent Baalke.
There was no doubt it was an exodus, and possibly one of the. You definitely saw it as a sort of a levee breaking. That's what I equated to.
Yeah.
As soon as University of Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh was it was clearly shown that they were not going in the same direction.
Oh yeah.
You just saw what was initially a crack with a couple of players here and there. Oh, we just need to get healthy again. It's possibly one quarterback, maybe one or two players at certain skill positions. It just blew up.
Oh yeah.
And I'm hoping that the same thing doesn't happen down in Tampa Bay with
I don't think it will.
I could on one hand, you could say that this season was a success. Their Jameis Winston did not fall apart. He stayed somewhat healthy during the season. They did win a few games back to back. They were in contention in the South. On the other side, the organization was expected to bring Smith in as someone to help right the ship, to immediately clinch a playoff spot, to show immediate success in going forward. Do you think, A, that Smith being let go was justified, and B, where did the Buccaneers go from here?
I think I can sort of see why they let him go, but I don't agree with their decision because they have that quarterback of the future, and Winston came in and automatically just became the leader of that team. He's charismatic, his personality is infectious, and you could tell the team was in a good place. And you even had, before their collapse at the end of the season, when they were still in contention for the playoffs, you had Tampa fans saying that Smith was a dark horse candidate for Coach of the Year. And then in terms of replacements, I think they're probably just going to hire Dirk Cutter, their current offensive coordinator, as the head coach. And you have some people saying that they fired Smith just to keep Cutter around because he was getting a lot of interest from other teams.
Mm-hmm.
So giving him the head coaching job would prevent him from leaving because they didn't want to split him and Jameis Winston up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why they made the decision. I think that's where they're going to go. Where they are going to go with hiring a new coach.
It would make sense as sort of a lesser of two evils, but wouldn't it also make sense for Smith to sort of be moved over in sort of a GM position or some sort of role to help continue to mold this team? I mean, it's not that they're exactly healthy at all positions, and they don't have sort of the look of a team that's going to be building or getting some impact players within the next 2 to 3 seasons. So my biggest question for that move was, why did you let experience go?
I think one of the reasons why they let him go was the defense wasn't performing to the standard that they expected when they brought Smith in.
Which is Smith's forte,
exactly.
Being in Chicago and having one of the top 10 defenses over the past few seasons.
Yeah, I think they felt that his defense was kind of outdated, and you saw it in the first week of the season where Mariota tore them apart, and that wasn't necessarily the players; it was the scheme. And Mariota played very well, but he was also helped by the nuances in the scheme that allowed him to perform to his best ability.
Well, hopefully that team makes a decision soon as to the direction that they want to go. I'm personally all about trying to continue and keep a team as is for as long as possible, basically ride the cart until the wheels fall off. However, after discussing this with you, I can kind of see where the idea of just trying to keep your quarterback happy because he is going to be the future of that franchise. You want to keep him successful. And there were definite times where he would have to fight and dig his team out of a lead that essentially his defense shouldn't have allowed to happen in the first place. And speaking of changes, one big one is being voted on right now in the league. And we'll actually have a featured contributor who's got a great post from Sidelines. His name is Mike Cortez, and right now he's bringing up the discussion about which team we would like to see in Los Angeles. And this question it's of course it's been going on for a long while. There are 3 teams in the discussion right now: the Chargers, the Raiders, the Rams. The Raiders and the Rams, of course, have had long history in Los Angeles, a huge fan base, great success stories out of both franchises, a Super Bowl out of I believe, the Raiders. I'm not sure about the Rams, if I recall. But you're talking about teams that are moving from areas that at the moment can't support them to an area that can support them 10 times over. So I guess my first question would be, which team, singular, would you like to see there for the time being, and why?
I think it probably would have to be the Chargers, simply just because they're not only are they, I think they're the closest team. They're closer than Oakland, aren't they?
Yes, by geographic design, for those that live outside of the United States and are tuning in right now, geographic location San Diego is the closest to Los Angeles.
And so I think they do have a lot of fans in the LA area, but also their stadium situation has to be the worst in the NFL for this year. Like it's old. It's an old stadium. It's all just a bit grotty, and the home crowd, it's basically been away games every time they play there this year. Like every home game, there's always more away fans. It's remarkable how they let that happen.
You know, it's one of the interesting things I pointed out in the discussion about San Diego possibly, or the Chargers possibly moving away from San Diego, is simply the fact that there are a bunch of Chargers fans in Northern California.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've taken straight from the opinions of other fans, that the area, especially in Santa Cruz, California, it's just like San Diego. The only difference is there are trees up here. So geographically speaking, if the Chargers moved up to Los Angeles, they would technically, literally, geographically be closer to their fans.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, I would kind of see it being a Raiders fan. It would be very difficult for me accepting the Chargers,
yeah,
as the team in Los Angeles for multiple reasons. All right, you look at the history of the fan base between the Los Angeles Rams and for the Rams and the Raiders. Los Angeles for both teams. They did share the city, much akin like other twin teams, the Dodgers and the Angels, sort of, and the Lakers and the Clippers, sort of. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because the Rams and the Raiders were two of the most successful teams to ever share a city in the last 3 decades. And if you really think about it, they have a lingering fan base that has always supported those two teams.
Yeah.
The franchise continues to sell product with Los Angeles and then the names of the teams. To bring in San Diego as a team is literally to say we're going to cut off all merchandise and all franchising.
Yeah.
For those teams and say we're now it's the Chargers of Los Angeles, and that I think would take a lot of getting used to. It would almost take as much getting used to as Anaheim Angels fans for baseball saying the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. If you can say that 10 times fast, then there's probably a job for you selling stuff on auctions out there somewhere. But it's a mouthful in and of itself.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But there is some underlying light to a San Diego team moving to Los Angeles. Now, if you decide to say we're just going to negate everything that the fans feel, the history of other teams being here, and if you're the San Diego Chargers, you go in and say, you know what, we're going to give you a successful football team here. Think about that. We're talking about a franchise that has successfully dominated both the Rams and the Raiders over the past, 5 seasons or so, in a very difficult AFC West division. Then it will almost be like saying, hey, we're moving the San Diego Clippers here to Los Angeles, and now they're going to be your new LA Clip. They're going to be your LA Clippers of football. Of course, this team isn't owned by Donald Sterling, so there'll be less controversy.
Yeah, they have a respected owner.
Yeah, we have a respected owner instead of that other guy. So there would be there would be some undertones, but a lot of success behind the franchise. Especially, you want to put a winning team in a huge market, which will garner a lot more fans. And that, I believe, would be my personal reason of picking the Chargers over the Raiders. That would probably be the only reason why I picked the Chargers over the Raiders in any sense of the word. But that would be the best situation. I'm also looking at the Raiders moving to Los Angeles, and it is honestly, and this is me being honest, is me being selfish. And any fan in Oakland, all fans in Oakland want Raiders to stay.
Yeah.
All fans in Los Angeles want Raiders to move. It may turn out that the Raiders, that both fans get neither. Rumor has it that Mark Davis is willing to move the team to San Antonio.
Yeah.
And that would
alienate so many fans.
So many fans altogether. And I believe that might be his trump card in telling the NFL, hey, you might lose fans altogether. San Antonio doesn't even like anything California related. So you're literally going to it's basically Mark Davis telling the league, I'm going to kill this team and this franchise if you do not move them to Los Angeles. But the reason why I say it's selfish is because the team is just now winning.
Yeah.
It's been about 12, maybe 13 seasons since we've seen a somewhat decent record. Still losing record, but a much better record than we've seen in those past years since 2002. And so you start to ask yourself, okay, if the team's now winning, why ruin a great formula? They're working out in Oakland. It's doing great in Oakland. The only thing that this team really needs is a stadium right now. They have a team. They have all the players in the right place, as Mike Cortez in his post points out. You got a really great team on the rise. They just got a great head coach. They got a great coaching staff. Why uproot this team now? I would say that it's almost like when you start to make friends at a new school and your mom tells you that we're moving.
Yeah.
And it breaks your heart because you think to yourself, I have to make new friends all over again. And I think that the selfishness comes in is that Los Angeles, I mean, you've had fans that have been hanging around. Some even fly out to Oakland for games on Sundays. But essentially, all the city of Los Angeles has left are the Dodgers as a winning franchise. And
Clippers, kind of.
And the Kings.
Yeah.
Los Angeles is used to having winning teams, and the selfishness comes from the fact that they want as many winning franchises in Los Angeles as possible. So I think that it's a very selfish move for all Los Angeles fans to say, oh, now that you're winning, thank you. But it would nonetheless be one of the biggest power moves in football that would probably turn the franchise completely around financially, economically.
Oh, for sure.
It'd do great wonders. However, if the team were to happen to stay, one of the things in Oakland, one of the things that they would have to do would be to rebuild or build up a whole new stadium for them. Tear down Oko and probably reconstitute it as just a Oakland Athletics only park. If they were to do that, the only way that I see them doing that is getting support from their neighbors, the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, but I believe the Warriors are planning to move across the bay to
San Francisco,
aren't they?
So it's how do you even say no, stay here? There's no plan for any one of those three mentioned teams, the Athletics, the Raiders, or for the Warriors to stay there because the city just right now can't support them. And speaking of cities that can't support, St. Louis is also reporting that it can only support one major sports team. You have the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals, a perennial division winner, definitely always in the playoffs, and then you have the Rams, who are playing in a very difficult NFC West. We're talking about St. Louis. Geographically speaking, that's on the other side of a little bit far from I see this team, and it's maybe a selfish thing again, but I'm sorry, I would rather see the Rams stay in St. Louis. I would rather see them try to be a two-team city.
I think out of in terms of the stadium situation, St. Louis definitely has the best stadium of the three teams, even if it is, it's a bit. There's not a lot of atmosphere in there for a dome.
No,
but then you could also say that that's because of the Rams and how they go 7-9 every year.
Mm-hmm.
And also of the owners, Kroenke is definitely the most vocal about wanting to leave. So it makes it a very interesting situation.
Right. Well, so if what would be the best situation for Los Angeles in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a hard one, but I think they're definitely going to get 2 teams. I definitely think they're going to get, because I believe I saw something today that I think the Carson project has been approved, or I saw something about that today. I could be mistaken.
We'll have to check on updates on that. Last I checked in, that Inglewood was leading in votes. Carson was second in votes. Neither team got the majority of votes. Again, it's 75% of ownership, I believe, to approve a move or a project, and neither city made the first round votes. So we'll be checking in on that, and we'll be checking back in to add a little bit to Mike Cortez's post. And speaking of our contributors, you being a big contributor yourself, where can we find you on Twitter? Can we find you on Sidelines?
Yeah, it's mostly just going to be Sidelines, and on Slack. I don't really use my Twitter or Facebook that much, to be honest. So yeah, just Sidelines and Slack is good.
Well, we'll be making sure to keep following you. And of course, folks, if you remember, just follow me. My name is Joshua Thompson. You can follow me on Sidelines. I'm easy to find. I'm the big guy with the Lakers hat on who's got a lot of love for a team that's going nowhere. You can also follow me on Twitter, @4F Apollo, like the Greek god. And you can also follow me on Slack, or you can find me on Slack, same handle as well. Hey, Paul, thanks for staying up so late to join the discussion.
It's all right.
and again, if you were to talk to a fan in London today, as a reason why they're a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars, what would be the number one reason?
I think for new fans, I think there are a lot of new fans going to the Jaguars just because you're going to be able to see one of their games every year in London. But I think the Jaguars are a franchise on the rise. I think they're very fun to watch, even if it can be a bit of a calamity at times if they're falling apart. But Blake Bortles had 35 touchdowns this year. Got Allen Robinson's now in the Pro Bowl. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot, particularly in offense, to build around. I think they could be very, very fun team to watch in the future.
All right. And just for all you other listeners, if you ever have a chance, please go onto our featured post later on today for this podcast and vote or create a podcast name for our NFL discussion, the Sidelines podcast. We will be tuning in. We will be bringing you more podcasts throughout the rest of the season and possibly through the rest of the year as well to keep you updated on anything football related. Again, I'm Joshua Thompson, Paul Fowler. Thanks again, guys. Signing off.